In this chapter or paragraph, we do an introduction of mechanism design. It is important that you realize that mechanism design is a very, very broad concept on its own, and that we just dive into a minor part where we apply it on blockchain technology. So in other words, we're going to introduce the core fundamentals or some fundamental basic principles of mechanism design. So let's start with the very first one. When applying to blockchain technology and building ecosystems, it is reverse game theory application. So we start with the end goal. So the end goal in, for example, Bitcoin's case would be self-sovereign, borderless, sound money. So if you want to have sound money, then you need to move back from sound money that's borderless. Okay, we need to have decentralized, we need to have a maximum supply and elements as such. That will be the design principles for your cryptocurrency in that case. But keep the end goal in mind and design the very first elements for that end goal. So if we do a recap when we discuss the different ecosystems in the circle that we had here, like this and this and this. So we start here, what's the desired society that we want to reach? And then we move all the way here. What we won't do is that we start here and then we'll see how we end up here. So do keep in mind, of course, that you might build something here that eventually won't lead you up here, but might straighten you to a different direction. And that's what's currently happening in Bitcoin's case, for example, as well. Some believe that we should move there, some believe we should move there in that spectrum. Like, for example, digital cash, or a store of value, or as a narrative, as you've seen already, like a data storage that's decentralized. Same concept applies for other blockchains as well. Ethereum has similar discussions, but the mechanism design is important that you keep in mind that it's reverse game theory. So you design backwards, you want to reach an end goal, so what principles do you need to take into account? So that's the first one. The second concept that's very important in this case is that it's all about sticks and carrots. So it's all about how to incentivize people. So they act in such a way that they benefit the entire ecosystems. I can't stress this enough. I've repeated this many times before already, but keep that in mind. The second thing is that it isn't only backwards, but when you reach backwards, it's all about incentives. So incentives often entice, the motivation often entice value transfer. So how do you stimulate somebody a bit that you steer them towards a certain direction? Important note there is that in game theory, you have an assumption that it is a rational actor in the system. So the people that you steer into a certain direction act according to a rational actor. As you and I already know that people aren't always rational, or me personally, I'm not always rational, it might apply to you as well. But you need to cover it from different angles. So how would a rational person behave? For example, it would be very irrational to produce blocks just for producing, or to produce invalid blocks. You are very destimulated to reproduce or produce blocks because invalid blocks won't be incorporated in the blockchain. So, but you could still do it. So you would design it in such a way that people can still have irrational behavior, but then they should or would only be punishing themselves. Okay, so when deciding what kind of incentives to use and to motivate, always keep in mind that people might act irrational as well. So punish them for irrational behavior. And this is also where the narrowness and the bias kick in, and which is why it's very important that you keep a multidisciplinary approach here. As mentioned in the previous session as well, Satoshi did the design principles of Bitcoin. So Satoshi determined, okay, we're going to use an Austrian economy. So a maximum supply, no government involvement in our currency. That's a single, well, depending on the amount of people working behind the name Satoshi, but that's not a very multidisciplinary approach, of course, other than when you use an economic or an ecosystem approach. So when designing this stuff, try to tackle your problem, your dot on the horizon, from as many different angles as possible, which of course is a tremendously, absurdly a huge challenge, which is why it's so incredibly awesome. That's what Satoshi managed to do eventually. They oversaw this dot and designed it in such a way that we could move towards the dot. An astonishing accomplishment. So sticks and carrots, incentivize them, rational behavior, and I think that covered the very first introduction of the mechanism design. And let's skip to the next one.